710 KEEL is your news and weather station.
Do the official introduction.
Okay, this is Louisiana State Insurance Commissioner Jim Donelon, and he is up here in town. I'm sure you've been surveying what's been happening. We have flood problems. Could have another crest coming that we've got to prepare for. What is your message to residents who've been impacted first off?
Well, thank you very much, Erin. Robert, always a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate greatly you making your listeners available to me as I make this statewide tour at the beginning of each hurricane season. As it turns out, fortuitously or unhappily, the flooding is impacting this area in a big way, even before Tropical Storm Bill headed up toward North Texas and beyond, glancing the northwest corner of the state, but I'm afraid bringing with it more rainfall for our already challenged levee system. The first thing I tell folks to do at hurricane season is get with your agent and do a insurance checkup. Find out what you have coverage for in all areas of insurance, but with particular emphasis on your property insurance and what's not covered. And by that I mean be aware that 40% of the homeowners' policies in the state come with a 5% named storm deductible. Almost all the others have a 2 or 3%, but 40% of them have 5% named storm deductibles embedded in the policy.
So that means this bill is going to be a named storm.
Absolutely. And it's not 5% of your damage caused by bill. It's 5% of your insured value. Typical home insured for $200,000, a $10,000 out-of-pocket expense, $10,000 named storm deductible for any damage connected with or caused by Tropical Storm Bill or any other hurricane.
Not necessarily flooding, just any damage.
No. Flood is excluded altogether.
Okay.
Since the 60s, after actually Hurricane Betsy hit New Orleans and flooded
Traumatized
St. Bernard and New Orleans East, they said, no mas. We're out of the flood business.
Basically, pardon me, private insurance companies, although mine runs through State Farm, my flood policy, that's basically underwritten by the federal government.
Not only underwritten, it is a FEMA program. They have one policy nationwide. Same policy in Bossier City is sold in Salt Lake City, and the rules are the same nationwide. Now, the premiums vary depending on flood risk, for primarily driven by elevation. So it's cheaper in Salt Lake City than it is in Bossier City. But areas that are protected by certified by the Corps of Engineers flood levee systems, like the metropolitan New Orleans area, get protection and lower premiums as a result of that certified levee system. One more quick point, 30-day wait. When you buy a flood policy, it doesn't go into effect until 30 days after you pay your first
Erin
premium.
had a story in the news, and you can clarify because I apologize to my longtime radio partner. I was half listening.
What's new?
You want an extension for flood victims?
I do.
Talk about that a second.
Yes, there is a proof of claim requirement in a flood policy, which what that means is basically a prescription period. After Katrina and Rita in 2005, I ordered the companies, and they reluctantly, voluntarily extended the prescription period for filing a homeowner's claim from 1 year to 2 years. The flood program, the flood policy applicable all over America, has a 60-day proof of claim requirement, which is the same thing as filing your claim and putting everything together within 60 days. After Rita, Katrina, that was extended. After Superstorm Sandy, it was extended. And at the last minute, the 59th day, when Senator Landrieu was calling me to extend the proof of loss requirement for the Isaac victims in St. John Parish, I said, Senator, I don't have that power. They don't even return my phone calls from the federal government sometimes. But at the last minute, primarily because Superstorm Sandy victims in New York and New Jersey were also coming up on that deadline, they did extend it. I've asked Director Craig Fugate, the head of FEMA, to extend it for the victims of this Red River flooding.
Every legislator, every politico, everybody we've had in any kind of position of importance over the last 2-3 weeks has stressed, and I know you do too, has stressed the importance of documenting via photograph
Yes.
every little thing that even might be construed to be flood damage.
No question about it. Actually, as part of your insurance checkup that I urge folks to do this time of year, I also urge them to do an inventory of their assets in their property and make a list, attach it to, or put it with your policy, wherever you keep that in a place of safekeeping. And even now, it's so easy. Walk through your house with your cell phone. Take pictures of your flat screen TV, your furnishings, whatever else is of value in there, artwork, if you have any, kitchen appliances, etc. Makes it so much easier to process a claim in the event of a loss.
Insurance Commissioner Jim Donelon, let me ask you, my house is flooded. How long before I should expect a check from my insurance company? What are the requirements?
Well, it won't be from your insurance company. It may be handled by your insurance company, but it'll be from the National Flood Insurance Program, a FEMA
That sounds
check.
like that takes long.
It does sound that way, and when I fussed about them having this 60-day proof of claim requirement in the policy, the excuse they gave me back was, we want to get money into the economy as quickly as possible. And I said, look, please show a little mercy on these victims of these horrific events, Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Isaac, and now this Red River flooding that we're experiencing as we speak. And don't worry about stimulating the economy. Give folks the time necessary to put their claim together. But to answer your question, it is not inordinate. That's all I'll say. I do not hear complaints about payments being delayed by NFIP/FEMA after completion of the claim process. That's not been a complaint.
Can you hang around with us?
I
'Cause
will.
I want to ask
Sure.
you two things. One, I want to know if we get a disaster declaration, what impact that has on how much you get paid by flood insurance, how much you get paid from the disaster. We kind of got to iron that out too.
She's got lots of questions, so
Let's do
thanks
it.
for staying around.
And wait till you hear what an adjuster told someone. I want to ask you about the disaster declaration that we're expecting, that will be issued, and the insurance coverage. What comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, the chicken, and that is the insurance coverage. And some folks say it's not fair, and others say it's actually a deterrent to folks getting insurance. Only about 25% of the property in Louisiana is insured for flood. And as I always say, that's the best buy. It really should be insured anywhere. You think you're high and dry and not subject to flooding. 25% of the claims paid by the NFIP are in low-risk areas, such as the Grand Ole Opry a couple of years ago in downtown Nashville. But what happened in the aftermath of Rita and Katrina with the road home money, generally anybody who had damage, check for $150,000, minus whatever property insurance, homeowners insurance, and flood insurance you had in place. So you only collect the difference between what you had insurance coverage for and the $150,000 everybody got. So typically that's how it works. And as I said, others say, well, that's not fair. I did the right thing. I insured my property and the other guy didn't, and he gets reimbursed. And it's a deterrent to folks buying insurance if they're going to get free money in the aftermath. But compassion rules, number one, and number two, you can't always rely on a declaration and a road home check for $150,000. So it is still very necessary and prudent to insure yourself.
Go on, tell him the story.
A friend of mine has a home, in a very high dollar home in our community, and he, prior to the storm, he spent a lot of out-of-pocket money, bought sandbags on his own, some 2,000, had to buy generators, pumps, the whole 9 yards, spent probably about $10,000 prior to the flood to save his home. They ended up saving it. No water got in the home. Water was up 4 feet on his 5-foot sandbag wall, but he was told by his adjuster, and I'm almost quoting now, you should have just let it flood because we can't pay for all the stuff you spent to save your home.
That's probably correct. I have not heard that question raised before. I do know that in the National Flood Insurance Policy and any other property insurance policy, there is a duty on the policyholder to minimize your loss. minimize your damage. What that generally means is if the roof flies off or a tree falls through the roof, you have a duty to go out and get a tarp and cover your opening and prevent further damage from happening to your property. I say you have a duty to do that. You don't have to put yourself in harm's way, get on the roof in 80-mile-an-hour wind to do that. You have to do what's reasonable to minimize your loss. The issue of preventive measures taken before an event, I've not heard that raised before. The adjuster probably knows and is probably correct. And it may hinge on such a technical aspect of the claim and the policy as this. If you have any loss from the flood, some other flooding event, even though your levee system that you built held, the water that accumulated within it ruined some carpeting, that may trigger a claim with coverage for those preventive steps that you took beforehand. Off the air, we were talking about all the lost time that the homeowner put into creating that levee system.
Off from work, yeah.
Lots of work. I doubt that would be covered, but frankly, if the sandbags are covered, then the lost time might be covered with it. I've not had that question before.
One other thing we've talked about a lot, and it's salt in the wounds to some, but we built a lot of homes. A lot of these nice, pricey homes are inside the levees. They've actually put a moratorium in Bossier Parish now on any new permits to build inside the levees. Is that something that, obviously those folks are required to have insurance when you build in a place like that. Is that something we need to take another look at?
First off, they're not required in order to build there. And when you say inside the levee, are you talking about on the water side of the levee?
Yes, on the water side of the levee.
The only requirement they may have to have flood insurance would be a mortgage, because 95% of the mortgages that are issued and funded in the U.S. are backed by the federal government and sold to companies that trade bundles of mortgages to investors all around the world. Most of those, not 95% of those loans have, with federal backing, all of the ones with federal backing, 95% of the loans have federal backing. All of the ones with federal backing, if you're in a flood-prone area, if you're below sea level in the New Orleans area, then you're required to have flood insurance. But to build out there with a permit from the city does not require flood insurance. Now, the question of availability of flood insurance, it's available if you build high enough. You would have to build on stilts or piers or what have you, pilings, in order to be able to show that you're above the expected flood area. No different than if you're on high ground on the other side of the levee, if you're built high enough on the water side of the levee.
Okay.
In other words, there are instances where even the Fed would say, I'm not insuring that. That's nutty.
That is, oh yeah, absolutely, all over
in other
America.
Words, if you're one of those California guys who builds on the side of the cliff, or if you build in some place that's 15, 20 feet below sea level,
absolutely,
even FEMA
has with underwriting
with
aspect.
The quote unquote mandatory flood insurance will say, you're on your own, pal.
Absolutely. And interestingly, after Katrina and Rita, when they spent $15 billion improving the levee system around New Orleans, which previous to those storms, they were spending $70 to $80 million a year on. It's better protected now than ever. When they passed Bigot Waters, and it came with a 5-year glide path to actuarial rates, some folks had 1,000% rate increases looming. They rolled it back a couple of months later with the Affordability Act and put a cap of 18% per year increases over the 5-year extension period. But even when they did that, the feds, the federal government said those homes within that new improved levee system in the 4-parish, Orleans, Jefferson, St. Bernard, and Plaquemine area were not subject to higher rates because of that certified levee system that protects that property, even some of it below sea level, from the likelihood of flooding.
Louisiana Insurance Commissioner Jim Donelon, thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you.